Yeah, we're excited to be here with you guys. My wife Kaylee and I, we don't get the opportunity to do things together.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, as we're talking about family and ministry today, how many of you guys are single? You're actually single. You don't have? Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love it. It's like we're all going like this, like No, I actually think that's
Single and mingling?
Yeah.
Is that a
is that
no?
a thing? Is that happening? Who were the ones that raised their hands? Yeah.
No, this isn't a dating.
No. But I asked that because I just think that's really cool that you guys are here as well. Because I think if we're not, if we mistake this, it'd be like we only talk about family and ministry once we get married and have a family. And I think if any of you have had a family for a while now, you realize some of these conversations would have been super helpful. Before. Because, when I'm called ministry at 14, I'm not thinking about family dynamic. I'm not thinking about who I'm going to marry in that moment. It's like that moment that this is my calling.
Yeah.
And so it definitely brings these dynamics that we're going to talk about today. But we've been married now 9 years.
Almost 9
Almost
years.
9.
Yep. In August.
And we're still working it out. We're processing it with the ministry and the family. We have 3 kids.
Yep.
Kingston and Kinley, they're twins. And so they're 8 years old, and we thought, you know what, it'd be easy just to add another one on. So we added a third, and it's not easy. So anyone with 3 kids here? Come on, that jump from 2 to 3, let's go.
Do you have anybody married without kids in here?
Okay.
There we go.
Nice.
I like it.
Awesome. How many of you guys have been married for more than 10 years? Because we're coming into 10.
Okay.
Love it.
Follow those people.
Yeah, right.
I don't
there.
know
Just
what we're
follow
doing.
it. Yeah. So, and we're really just still figuring this out. I think it's a work of progress. I think if just to give everyone a deep breath here, whether you're single, you're married, you've been married for a while, you have kids, you're never figure this out.
Yeah, totally.
You're always processing, right, the balance between ministry and family. And I think for a lot of us, and at times in our marriage, it doesn't feel like a balance. Right,
Yep.
it feels like a what, like a
war,
like a war,
or like a tension.
Like a tension.
It can. No,
yeah. No, it's
I
good.
mean, we're just really honest and authentic people. So is that okay today?
Yeah, are we
if we
good
just
to get
have
real and
a
authentic?
family conversation in here?
Yeah. So
because there are things that you think you're gonna get married and you think it's gonna be this way and it's gonna be that way, and you get married, you're like, I married a sinner. and I'm a sinner too, and then that humanity comes out.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and then you throw dynamic with church, kids, seasons, and so what I love about this, wherever you're at in the journey, there is this tension that we face in life, and I think a lot of times we equate it to our spouse. This tension that I'm feeling is actually with my spouse, and so it's not this balancing act. It's really this almost, and we got this, and this is the first time we're using this illustration. Let's see if this works, babe. But
I'm not sure what we're doing with
you don't
it.
even
I'm
know.
just going to be
You
really
just sound
candid.
funny. But
Matt said it's going to work, so we're going to try it.
It's not a balance. It's really, it feels like for some of us, this tug of war, right? Like if you're really thinking about marriage and family, some of you don't have that marriage or family yet, but I will tell you this, you're still having a tug of war. There's still tension. And what we found is in not only just in ministry and family, but in life, there's these same tensions. And in these tensions you face, so let's not just zone it out to a spouse thing of tension, but just as individuals, I deal with the tensions around my calling.
Yeah.
I deal with tensions around our calendar.
Oh.
Come on, before you were married, didn't you have tension around?
Want to talk about tug of war?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, yeah, I'm coming. I know I'm all the way over here. Yeah, and for some of us, that calendar when you're at school, you're in a university, and you think, oh my gosh, my calendar's so crazy. You feel that tension.
Yeah.
You're not even married yet, right? So it's stuff we've already been feeling. And I think sometimes we equate this to marriage because we're going, oh wow, this tension I'm feeling because of my marriage or because of ministry. When in fact, we've always dealt with this tension. Yeah. We've always dealt with the tension of call, calendar, culture. There's always this tension of when you're going into a different church, if we're just talking ministry, or you're hanging out with different friends, there's cultures that come together, and there's this tension that we feel even in our friendships and our relationships. We've got, help me babe, what's out on that end?
Candor.
We've got candor.
How do you define candor?
Let me define candor. So there's this tension around communication. A lot of people will say it's communication, but I love the word candor because it's truth and it's authenticity spoken. And I think sometimes in our day and age now, we're going to get into these 5 things within marriage and family and dealing with this tension, is a lot of the times we talk about communication and, well, how are we going to have this tactic to talk to that person? When in fact, in family and marriage, I believe we need to have that healthy tension that you can say what's really in your heart. That you don't have to coerce or manipulate, but you're able just to say, hey, here's how I'm feeling right now. But how many of you guys know when you start saying how you're really feeling, tension starts to happen, this back and forth.
I think instead of a balance, sometimes we want to keep it like this. And some of these things can come up. Like I just said with calendar. It's funny we're doing this talk. We're dealing with this right now.
Yeah.
Calendar, honey, you said you were going to be home.
Yeah,
you
this
said
time. Yeah.
you're not home.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a war.
Yeah. And then even apply that to ministry. Maybe you don't have the family. It's the same thing with your pastor. Hey, I thought this calendar, this is what you were supposed to be doing. Let's redefine that. And so I think before we start just talking about family marriage, let's just all get on the same page. What's that last one?
Candor.
The very far one is candor? Okay, well, there you go. We already went through all of them. That was quick.
Change.
There it is. There's change. And change brings this tension into your life. And so what happens is then you get people that, all of us, and we end up getting married and we tie the knot. Now it starts getting interesting because now you have two people that already have these tensions with your calendar, your call, your candor, and all these different tensions. And now you're really supposed to, with different perspectives, different thoughts, make sure you tie that knot really tight.
I got you.
Someone just needed to hear that right. Get that knot tied, yeah. And so what happens then is you get married, two people brought together becoming one, and now this is where we start feeling that real tension, a back and forth. And unfortunately, we then start blaming other things, ministry hours, our pastors, our spouses, and now it's not this beautiful dance. Now it's become this war, and it's back and forth. So my heart for you guys today as we go through these 5 different things is really to understand that this doesn't have to be a war of a tug of war, but it's really two people coming together, families coming together. If you're single, be processing this as you're really dating and figuring out what that person's next step is in life. This is going to help you in big ways, because I find it's not necessarily a lack of programming. Maybe you're at the wrong church. When you're married and family, that tension that we're feeling often comes from the home. And so to be able to talk about it and be able to process, it's a big thing. So let's just start today. We're going to go through each one. And what we want to do is we want this to be more collaboration. So we're going to talk about each one, and then we're going to stop a moment. And if you have questions or even some thoughts around it, let's take a moment and just talk through that and have some questions around each specific one. And so I want to start with the call. I want to start with that first C and that tension that often is created within family, ministry, and just as individuals. But specifically, as we were brought together, our story is interesting because I met Kaylee when she was 14 and a half, and I was 18. And so I was an intern, and she was in the youth ministry there. And it worked out, thank God, because I would have been a creeper if it wouldn't have. Okay, we got journal entries of 2005 where I was writing things and just saying I was going to marry you, and it happened. So that's awesome. But to process that and be excited, and then you get married, each person's bringing in their own specific calling. I think so often this is such an interesting dynamic, and you can speak to this, but when people are asking us, like, how's you do your call together? That's a very sensitive question because not everybody is like us. Yeah. Not everybody functions the way that we've decided to function with around our call. And I love what 1 Corinthians 7:17 says. Paul says this: continue to do what you were doing before you were saved. And in this passage, he's actually talking to married people. And he's talking about their function. And what he's saying is when you get saved and you come together as one, continue to do the things you were doing, those gifts that you had, the gifts that God wants to fan in a flame. And I think so often we bring two people together. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about that tension that we've experienced as bringing our two calls together and figuring out, well, how does this actually look? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's a journey of discovery. It's a journey of trial and error when you're trying to work with anybody, let alone work with your spouse in ministry, in your home, in all of these areas. But I think a lot of times what happens is we see these people and they're doing it successfully and they're getting praise for it. And we say, well, then we have to be like that too. Well, then, honey, you didn't see that wife speaking? That's what's giving him influence. You should be speaking. Or, honey, don't you know you're supposed to be a worship leader? Because I'm supposed to preach and you're supposed to be the worship leader. And so we put these yokes and we put this armor on our spouses that aren't theirs to carry, and it causes tension.
Yeah.
It causes tension because you're asking me to live in something that I wasn't called to live in. And we begin to live in that, and that's where the tension comes in.
Yeah, and you think comparing your ministries and stuff, try comparing marriages within the ministry.
Yeah.
That's what some of us are doing. So you're putting a yoke, like you said, on your spouse that's not hers to carry. I remember early on, our first year, I mean, we were dating for 8 years.
Yeah.
And
Back and forth.
Back and forth. We were breaking up back on, and then it worked out. Then we tied that knot. And
He locked it in.
And what's interesting, amazing, fascinating about that is we knew each other for 8 years, and so out of all people, you would think that like once we get married, we know the flow. We know what we're doing. We know what we're. But the church dynamic, financial dynamics, kids dynamics, and we'll talk about changes that begin to happen. But the tension that was created around our call, I would have never even thought that would have happened. Because for me, again, I compared, well, I'm preaching, and you can sing. You can carry a note, and you've been put up there.
Thank you, honey.
And so our first few years in ministry, I'm like, you know what? It makes sense if you want to be involved in ministry. So I want to be involved in ministry, like completely, 100% in. One thing, 100% in. Well, then I guess you're doing worship because you don't like to preach. Yeah. And it was fine, but she wasn't graced to do it. Yeah. And I think that's the problem. Is I'm not saying you're not good at leading worship, but is that what you've been graced to do within your ministry that's going to bring full, maximize your capacity in your ministry within your family dynamic? Yeah. And then your ministry as well. Right. And I don't think this is a one or the other. It's not a what comes first, ministry or family. For us, it's both. It's at the same time, it's together. And to look at your calling that they're two in one doesn't mean that's how you should function. You know, we've decided, that you don't work, you go full-time with the church. And that is the dynamics that brings financially. If that's what we feel like she's called to do, then God's going to provide. He's going to give your family wisdom. He's going to give you wisdom on those side hustles that don't take you away from the ministry time. Most of the time. Most of the time. There's the calendar. We're going to be calendar next. And so I think to blanket it just does it such a disjustice within our calling.
And that's even true for if your spouse is called to a different career than you. God will grace you in that moment, and it doesn't have to look like we do it. It doesn't have to look like Zach Cash does it. God's graced you for your season, and he's going to equip you with what you need in that season as long as you submit that under the lordship of Christ. Mm-hmm. Because we could do it this way, and that can still not be submitted under the lordship of Christ. Wow. Mm-hmm. You could do it that way, and you're running two different lanes, and that's not submitted. So there has to be this mutual submission to each other, but there has to be this mutual submission to the Lord first, and he will grace you, and he will walk you out, and he will make your path straight.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's great. So around that questions, we're going to take a pause. Anything around that calling that you even have a question around that, maybe for you and your family, we're just going to take a moment after each point just to stop, process about that before we go to the next one. Okay. Then we'll have some more time afterwards, too. The second one is calendar. Let's talk about that because that's fun. And I think the phrase that we talk about a lot around our calendar to really that tension that you're feeling back and forth is really this isn't forever. That's a phrase I use a lot. And I think it's a really healthy phrase as you're dealing with the dynamics of tension and calendar and family and ministry is that there's just natural times. The thing about ministry, you guys, is that it's a rhythm. It's not a schedule. Yeah. And I think we forget that because as you're going into marriage, you're going, hey, well, I'm going to be 9 to 5. This is what it's going to be. And maybe for your spouse that works because they're in a business world or entrepreneur or whatever they're doing. But in the ministry sense, it really is a rhythm. And so we got to start looking at it as a rhythm because in any rhythm, it's going to get out of whack and offbeat at times. Mm-hmm. And to be able to identify that to your spouse and to say, hey, look, this is unhealthy because this is not what we have decided we were going to do with our calendar. Yep. Then we've got to start going, okay, well, then how do we get that back? You don't freak out. You don't say, well, the church is doing this or you just said that or that. You begin to talk it out and begin to say, okay, what are the main things to our calendar? What have we decided as a family? What are the non-negotiables? What are the family nights that are consistent, right? And then knowing that there's been 4 weeks without family nights as I just tell you that. Yeah. So let's be real here, I just told you there's this, and that's why this is a tension to manage, is because I just got done saying, hey, we protect our family nights, but it's been 4 weeks since we've had a family night. Mm-hmm. Now, some of us are like, well, that's why I never, try to do any more, or I feel like he's saying this, but I'm not going to do that because it's about the family. Well, that's true, it is about the family, but we're doing it both together, and it doesn't last forever. If I'm talking to you guys like this 6 more weeks in advance, later on and I'm still 10 weeks out from us having our family moments, those moments that we've decided we're going to have, then the red flag comes up and we need to change some things ASAP. Because I am not serving my calling and our calling if we're not owning our calendar, if that makes sense. So anything you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I think it's just, like you said, attention to manage, not a problem to solve. Because I have a calendar hung up in our house. I have a calendar hung up in your office. I have the calendar on my phone. And you could say, you planned. We still missed the mark. We've missed the mark this last month. But there's grace in that. And I think there are ways to manage that. And there's people in your life, and God's put you in a community to help you manage that. I always go back to, my grandma always told me this, Jesus died for the church so you don't have to. And I think that's powerful, and some of us need to just take that in for a second and process it, because we keep filling our calendars. We're saying yes, but God, that's honoring God, but that's honoring God. There are people in your life, there are people in our ministry that can do things better than us, that are grace better than us, and what are we going to get threatened by that? No, we invite that in because our calendar matters, and you can't do it all. Add your kids, add their soccer games, add. You can't be fully there and fully there. So God's put Aaliyah, God's put Aaron Picaro, God's put Ben Abali, God's put Freddie Parado. God's put people in all of our lives, that's called the body of Christ, to pick up things when we can't. And for us to sometimes, I think as leaders, be threatened by that and not to celebrate that. Hey, Aaron, you're a better youth pastor. He's one of our leaders. You are a better youth pastor than I'll ever be. Go, run. And I think sometimes as leaders in the church, if we're just talking about the church aspect, we think we need to do it all because we think we're the savior and we need to be the hero. When God said, no, I've called you to lead so that you can empower, so that you can be at home and you can be in the ministry, and it can all work together, but you've got to do the work in here. Good. To allow the Lord to release that out there.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And one phrase that we use all the time is that we say no to the excessive so we can say yes to the essential. Yeah. So not excessive meaning too many things and doing a lot of things. No, we can do, you all have a high capacity and you have leaders around you. So it's not necessarily saying no to the excessive of all a bunch of stuff. It's what is the essential. What are those 3 or 4 things that you're like, this is essential to our family, ministry, our lives, and we're going to do that really well. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff then that comes into that. But you got to get your family calendar down and say, hey, when's 3 weeks out of the year we're going to go on vacation? Now, one of those weeks is with family, extended family. So is it really vacation? But you're just
That's
planning it
all
out.
Debate.
Yeah. But to get ahead of it and to look at your calendar and your ministry and family and say, how can this work together? Not this poll, but we're coming together. When are those natural busy seasons? Okay. Take the busy season, take that extra week after your event. I always find it crazy that people leave right after their event because it's like that's the time where it's all fresh. Like let's take that week, process it, work hard that last week, and then let's go on a vacation. But for your spouse to see that ahead, 3 months ahead, like what we see in April, right? We're going to Chelan. Now with this busy month, now we're able to I know we missed the mark on that, but we have something we're looking forward to. And so really that calendar and owning that calendar ahead of time, and you're not going to hit everything. There's things that get canceled, there's things that we don't hit. But if you've got the skeleton, it's going to help you two, your family breathe a lot better. Because then it's like, we never hang out. Oh, wait, no, let's look. No, yeah, we did this month. And you're able to really look, oh, yeah, remember when we went on that? That was so cool, that special moment. So it's just really that calendar is so important. So any questions or thoughts around the calendar dynamic of family and ministry on either end? Great, let's go. This is awesome. The next thing is ministry and family is culture. One thing that's a huge deal because how we build our culture in our homes and in our ministries really are what's planting seeds to what it's going to be like down the road. I was just talking to a youth pastor a couple days ago where he just came into a situation and the culture that was developed in the worship culture for that ministry, he's going to feel the impact, that negative culture for probably his whole youth ministry there. I mean, it could be years. Culture matters is what we create. And I don't think we talk about it enough as marriages and ministries, how important that is. You know, Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. Yeah. And so the culture that we bring is really a culture that, are we protecting the heart of the home? Am I, as a husband, as you as a wife, are we protecting the heart of the home and of the ministry? It's a together thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many times, you guys, as a culture that I've created, is walking in from an office situation when I should have just taken about an hour to breathe, come home and just rip a good one into Kaylee. She thinks I'm mad at her. I'm just upset. And this might be too vulnerable for some of you. But there's just moments in ministry where you just feel like you need to vent. Yeah. And so the balance of really this healthy culture that we're creating, even in that, it's how do I talk about my lead pastor?
Yep.
How do I talk about the other staff? How do I talk about our leaders? How do I talk about that frustration moment? Because not only is I'm protecting her heart, but once you have kids, they're listening. My 8-year-olds, they are listening by how I talk to the church. And recently there's a study of why are young adults leaving the church that were once Christians. And the main reason is because what they saw in their homes did not match up to what they were saying amen to on Sunday mornings. None of us are perfect, thank God for his grace. There's so many times I look at my kids in the eyes and I go, I'm so sorry. That wasn't Jesus.
Yeah.
We need those moments. But the moments are we protecting as much as we can the heart of our home? Because our kids are listening, and how you talk about that person that they just saw you say, hello, brother, and gave them a hug and prayed over them in the lobby. Man, talk about just destruction of seeds. And right now, a big thing, Becky was talking about that, is just families. And PK is leaving the church. I think it's a lot around the kind of culture we create in ministry and in family together.
Yeah, and I think something that how we function in our house, you are absolutely, my husband is the head of our home, absolutely, I believe that, I submit to that, but absolutely, I'm the heart, I'm the culture keeper in our house. I set the tone, I set the temperature when he walks in, and so if he comes in thinking I'm going to be his counselor and throw up, guess what I do? I pick it up, I think I'm his defender, and I hold that.
And what gets under your heart for that one moment, or under my skin, we've heard this before, gets under your heart. Yeah. So there would be a year that went by. I'm like, I just grabbed coffee for so-and-so. I was just like, what? Why would you grab coffee by that? I mean, we're being vulnerable here. But it's like, too much? Your wife's like, I never do that. But what? Yeah, right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I'll come home and I'll say something off the wall, but then the next morning I'm out coffee, fist bumping it with my buddy. But I feel the need to pick it up, and now she's picking it up and holding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
culture. Just not my position. That is not our call. He needs to go find a counselor. Yeah. Stop coming home and throwing up on me.
And I have.
I'm not saying you.
I have.
I'm using you.
I did.
I'm using you. I'm using him as a he's very good at it. But in our homes, we've got to protect that heart. We got to protect that culture, because Becky brought up something last night, pastors' kids. I'm a pastor's kid. Any other pastor's kids in here? We got pastor's kids.
Come on.
God has a really, really special place in his life for pastor's kids, okay? So whether you are one in here or you're going to be raising them, it is a mandate and it is a call to protect their hearts as much as it is to protect yours and to protect your husband's. And so we've got to watch how we're talking. Our culture has a problem with authority and a problem with submission.
Yeah.
Okay, not just our kids in our home, our kids in our youth. You guys, we're youth pastors. Our kids have a problem with authority. They got a problem with submission. I can't help but wonder where they got that from. Are they getting that from the home? Are we modeling what it means to be submitting? Are we modeling what it is to honor our leaders? Because let me tell you something. You can honor your leaders to their face and with your mouth, but if you aren't honoring them in your heart, your kids are not stupid. Your kids are intuitive. Your youth kids are intuitive. Are you still talking smack about a past thing 5 years ago? Come on, get over it. I mean, truly, get over it. We've got to move on and past that so that God can do something new in us. We don't want to live in that. And I get there's dysfunctional things that happen, and there's moments that you need to process and talk about it and find other people. But let's keep it out of the heart of our home.
I want to push that, even the dysfunction. You don't want to wound the children. So we're not even trying to say where you came from was just not dysfunctional, or there's moments you need to leave and that kind of thing. But how are you speaking of that, and are you processing it? Because that culture will go right into family lineage. Yeah. And I've seen it. You see it just pass on down. Yeah. And it breaks my heart, because while we're trying to reach the church, we're not even reaching our families first with that culture. And then we expect to go into a church culture and say, submit to authority, have communicate good, family, good, healthy things and culture. And if we're not building that at the home, then how do we think we're going to lead a ministry that doesn't have an honoring culture? Now people can post whatever they want. Influence, you attract influence now. You're not giving it anymore. So people can say whatever they want, rally a bunch of people around them to take down some other entity. And not saying those entities don't need to be taken down, but man, there is no accountability on either side. There's no accountability for people to just want to say whatever they want and round a bunch of people up and take down something. And it's scary, it's great, and it's healthy. We need that accountability more than ever in the church. I embrace it. It's awesome. But man, there's a side of the coin there. We're not going to let that kind of stuff creep into our family. Not that we're naive or we don't know what's really going on. But come on, these are children. You're youth pastoring children. They're not your friends. And so we need to really create that culture.
I think Matt, it just goes back to having that fear of the Lord. What Peter talked about, that wonder. Just that holy submission under the lordship of Christ, and that'll bleed out into everything we do, right? But I think sometimes we just forget, God's in charge. Something we say in our house a lot is we trust the story. We trust the story of God. So when something kind of twerks us wrong or someone's rubbing us wrong, we deal with it, but then we say, man, we trust the story. And we kind of laugh about it. But that's just one of the phrases we use in our home to kind of protect that heart and protect that culture. Yeah,
that's good. Any questions around just kind of this as we're thinking and talking through it? Yeah.
I love what you're saying about culture. I mean, I feel this is encouraging life because no matter what couple I speak to, whether they've been married for 20 years or 5 years, I feel like everyone's still adjusting culture and recalibrating. And, figuring things out where they missed it. So it's encouraging to know that this is going to be a constant thing we're going to have to revisit. Well, just having some interactions with my 6-year-old daughter and seeing how just not being aware of my demeanor when I come home. And not really understanding that my wife and my daughter are witnessing the weight of ministry on me. And then I just noticed how it was starting to take effect on my family. And what Kaylee, you mentioned was so true because my wife is one of my greatest defenders.
Absolutely.
And when she sees me resented, who does she become resented with?
Absolutely.
The entity that wounded me. Right? So I inadvertently am putting seeds of resentment of the church, of the ministry.
That's insightful.
And what's happening is the opposite of what I desire because I want my wife to be with me, partnered with me in the ministry. So I'm asking God, how can I work better with my wife? But I'm sowing seeds of resentment in her. So normalizing getting counseling and therapy so that I'm going and dump all that on my 6-year-old and on my wife. It's been one of the most healthiest things that has happened. And now what I'm seeing is my wife being a lot more all in ministry, right? But that took me humbling myself and recognizing that I need a safe place for me to get real and speak about some things that I'm dealing with. So I just love everything that you shared, and because to be honest, there's been plenty of times in which I didn't know that I was putting these seeds in my family. And it did the very opposite of what I truly desired. And it's really hard to get that back. I saw like that little bit of light in my wife to kind of dim down. And
absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that, guys.
I love your insight and just your honesty with that because I think sometimes we can be in church spaces and even events like this, and we can come in and kind of put on the new shirt or put on the happy face and say, I wasn't calling you.
No, it's a new shirt. I like it. She's like.
But just, this is why we have networks. This is why we have people. This is why we run the race together. We're not trying to compete here. We're just trying to learn from each other. And so I love that vulnerability because I think more people should be. Because we're all struggling. We all miss the mark. We all fall short of the glory of God. And so if we can't be honest with that, then what do we do with it?
It's good. It's good. Let's move on to the next one. Ministry and family is candor. And so it shows a different word there because, again, I just feel like communication's so just overplayed, just, hey, make sure you have good communication. And I'm like, well, what is, we do, like I'm telling her, but the candor, that word candor, I think is so important in our, just even in our culture right now, because candor, that meaning is just truth and authenticity of really where you're at in that moment. So it's not giving there's moments where you need to give yourself time, all that. But when you're with somebody you love, specifically your spouse, your family, there should be a moment of honesty where you don't have to process all the stuff, but you're able to say, hey, there's an offense here. Help me process it together.
Yeah.
You know, there's an offense that I've taken with you or the ministry. Let's do this. And we're both firstborns. So, and then our twins are technically, we don't have a middle child because, you know, the twins were born at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. But we're like a family, a bunch of firstborns. And you get that. If you're firstborn, it's like we instigate. And then all the other ones, they just retaliate, right? It's like, I can't tell you how many shovels I've been hit. I have scars here
Not
from my
from
brother.
me.
No, not from Kaylee.
Clarify.
Yeah. I've had stuff thrown at me from you. No, I'm just kidding. But just like my brother, you know, he's younger than me and all these scars and all this. But I think, though, then we had to really learn what healthy candor is, because there is truth, there is authenticity, but you do that in a respectful and a loving way. Ephesians 4:1 says, but speaking the truth in love, we are to grow in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ. I love that. Speaking in truth in love. That's what candor should be, but why? So we are able to grow up in all aspects. So what candor is supposed to do is not to attack. It's not to create this tension. It's actually trying to help one another grow on all aspects of life. Who is what? In Christ, who is the head. So knowing that as the husband, I'm not coming as, well, I'm the head of the home. Let me candor with you a little bit and tell you how I'm really feeling. But it's really, no, Christ is the head of home. I'm coming to candor with you so that we can honor him with our lives and our ministries. And it sounds so elementary, but I have to stop myself, and I hope, you know, not just me, but both of us have to stop ourselves and process, what does this look like to speak truth in love, but as it's honoring Christ and he's the head of the home.
I think that's huge. And like you said, we're passionate people. We are passionate lovers, but we're passionate fighters. And so we've had to figure out that dynamic in how are you going to hear me and not just hear what I'm saying, but like hear what I'm saying. And I can't be disrespectful. He won't hear me. I can. It's not going to do much. But that's our automatic instinct in the moment, right? To just pop off. Well, at least mine. But so for something for us, and we didn't even talk about this before, but I realized something we do in our home intuitively that's really helped is we have these like phrases, and they're phrases that are words, and they mean something, but to us, it's like a, hey, time out. One of those phrases I wrote down is, I say a lot, hey, I'm following you.
Oh, I love that one.
Hey, I'm following you. And so you guys hear that, I'm following you. Oh, that's so cute. They're so romantic. No.
It's like, I'm
not
following
what that
you. You're
means.
leading me down this. What are you leading me down
That
here?
means like, honey, you got a car full of people. You're going off the road. You're slamming on your brakes. Like, we're following you. Like, hey, I'm trusting you. You've got a big responsibility. And so that's something that that's one phrase. Another phrase I wrote down that we say that kind of, I always feel like this phrase kind of brings us back to home base, is when we're really in a heated moment, we say, hey, we're on the same team.
We're on the same team.
Hey, we're on the same team. And that's not just like a cute phrase. That brings us back to, okay, wait, we're not against each other.
This isn't a tug of war. We're on the same
We're on
team.
the same team. So I think we say that quite a bit in our house. Hey, we're on the same team. And so I think coming up with just phrases like that maybe nobody else would get, but you and your partner are like, oh, okay, I know what you're saying. I know what he's saying. I've gone too far. I touched a wound there. I said something that really hurt him there. I said that in a way he's not going to hear me. And you'll say, hey, we're on the same team. Hey, we're not against each other. And so phrases like that will really bring you back to home base. And it will help you really with that candor.
Yeah, no, it's great. And really truth, you know, because that's the goal, is to get candor is truth. So truth is best received through timing and tone. And so if you get just like, well, because I know the question, like, well, how do you candor and all this? Well, just be watching your timing and your tone. Because, I mean, my goal is not to hear her. My goal is to feel you. Thank God. That's always great. But anyway, so it's not to hear what you're saying necessarily or how you're saying it. It's to feel where they're at in the emotions and that their souls are in distress. So it may be a simple thing to me, like, what? Why are you saying it like that? You know, you don't get lost in the words. I need to feel where you're at so I can watch my tone and my timing, and it just really helps with that. And so, like, you know, Sunday mornings, we just know that we're usually not candoring on Sunday mornings, you know, before church. And another thing you say is, hey, we'll talk about it later. And we're good. Like, we'll talk about it later. We're good, though. Are we good? We're good. So that's a big one. Anything around candor that anyone wants to bring insight to? Anything like that? Or thoughts? Yeah.
I'm finding that it's amazing that you guys are sharing this point as of right now. When I met my wife, she was in salvation before I was. I was out in the world. I just got saved about 5 years ago, so praise God.
That's
But
amazing.
when I was seeking my wife and trying to do it in a worldly way, her question is, if you want to pursue me, you have to pursue God first. It's like, right? Me and God? No way. You're out of your mind. How can I compete with God? But she was being true to me. She was speaking truth.
Yeah.
Like,
That's good.
I want a man of God, not just a worldly man. I want a man of God that's going to.
Yeah.
So I respected that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
it
what
took
we
a while.
hear sometimes, if you just hear it, is, well, I'm not enough.
Yes.
Right? I want a manly God.
Yes.
Or a godly man. Instead of feeling her and going, man, I just want a lineage where my family loves God and we have, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Anybody else? Yeah.
Okay, so in the midst of, like, let's say it's a youth night, right? I'm a youth woman, so, to Pastor Britt here, that's great. But, I'm like running around like a chicken with my head cut off, right?
As we all are.
Yeah.
100 students, like, hey, can you tell me the answer to all my life's problems? And then I have one over here who's like, can you just stop and pray with me real quick? And I'm like, Dog, no, I'm trying to put out 15
Dog.
fires.
Dog, no.
And then in the midst of that, I have my spouse come up who's
Yeah.
like, hey, I just need to talk to you for 5 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
I know you're in the middle of it, but real quick. And
Yeah.
every single time I find myself like, hold on, no, not right now, leave
Yeah.
me alone. And I snap.
Yeah.
So how do you, because I pride myself on communication, I'm always a talker. So that's like something in our marriage that we have like tried to really cultivate.
Yeah.
But I'm finding struggle in that in the midst of doing the work. And we actually had a
That's huge.
conversation where, you know, it was like, hey, I don't feel like I'm important to you right now. I feel like I'm getting pushed to the side.
Wow.
Like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't want for this 12-year-old to take the place of my spouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
Absolutely.
So how do you do that in those moments?
Yeah.
It's good. So I'll take just the moments where everything's crazy, everything's going on, people are coming up to you. Again, I'll go back to timing and tone. Okay? So this conversation is way too important for me to have it in 10 seconds. So I'll stop the person and go, well, what do you, because sometimes it's like, hey, where's the pop at? Where's the soda? It's like, okay, it's over there. You wish it was deeper, but half the time it's not, you know? I'm so upset. You know why? And she's like, what? Okay. But I think just slowing down for a moment and stop. And so you probably are going and just stop, look them right in the eyes and just say, and they're like, hey, but I really want to talk about this. Or you said this last week and it really offended me or something. You know, this is what you're too important, and this conversation is too important to be just having this during one of our services, you know, right now. And then your tone where I'm just too busy. It's like, no, I am busy, but not too much for you. I want to take more time on this. Let me text or call you throughout the week, and then you actually do it. You got to follow up with that if you're going to tell them that. And that's with leaders. Even, you know, there's times where we're going and running. I'm like, man, why isn't that done there? And she goes, hey, tomorrow's coming. Like, we can talk about it tomorrow. It's not a big deal in this moment, you know, and really distinguishing those moments.
I think that's something you're saying, too. If you go back to coming up with one of those phrases like we talked about with something different, when you are in that moment, then you already have a response that he knows what you're saying. And so maybe that's, hey, let's talk about this tomorrow, or whatever that is. So you guys have already agreed upon a phrase. Hey, this isn't my heart right here, but this is what I'm going to say when I'm in this intense moment, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And so already having a made up response will kind of help those moments when you're feeling like, ah.
Yeah.
Then you already have something to say when you face those moments.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah.
Like I say, I really appreciate what you say about the praises.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I picked up on using in that moment.
Yeah.
Going back, something I just realized, like, okay, I'm auto glass technician. I'm out on the field. I'm dealing with customers.
Yeah.
I know if my phone rings once, I can't deal with it. Twice, okay, something maybe I should answer. 3 times, that's 911.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's just something
good.
we haven't really discussed with
Yeah.
my wife, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's really
I
good.
know I got to answer that. I got to
Yeah.
stop what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Solid.
The same with the catchphrase, hey, not right
Yeah.
now. Or is it an emergency?
It's
I
good.
need to put that aside.
It's really good. Well, and as we close, this last part is the changes part. And this one's a big one because changes come. You can
Yeah.
plan out how your life's going to look, what ministry you're going to do, and you'll realize you get knocked off that horse real quick. Man plans his course and the Lord directs his steps. So in that moment in marriage, this can be some of the most tension times as you're trying to hear from the Lord of what's this change, how is this looking, all those things. And, when we did marriage counseling, her biggest fear is change.
Was.
Well, yeah, not anymore. We beat that
He
out.
beat it out of me.
So, yeah. But, that
I'm
was her
really
biggest.
good at
That's
it
right.
now.
It's true. Yeah. Hers was change was her biggest fear, and mine is boredom. We had no idea what that dynamic was going to bring into the marriage. You just don't know. And so this is super healthy with change because, man, I try to create change just to do it.
Yeah.
Because I get
Every
bored.
day.
I'm like, man, this is boring. Christianity shouldn't be boring. What are we doing next? How are we reaching more people and stuff like that? And but to have that dynamic then within change to, again, know who you're with, who's your spouse, understand their greatest fears, because in change, your fear comes out. In change, the foundation doesn't feel there anymore. So you're going to automatically default then.
Wow.
That's not going to necessarily be healthy.
Wow. That's good.
So when I default, it's actually to change is actually not a healthy thing. When I feel bored or feel like, something's just kind of feeling anxious in my soul, I automatically just want to jump and go, well, let me just do something so I can just skip through that. We know how detrimental that is. That's why I wrote a book called A Settled Soul. It was for me, and now it's been a blessing to other people. I'm like, well, that's cool. But what do you do those moments of unsettling? Because some of you are in my realm. You're like, let's just change it. We've had to process it. How does that look? And then how do we do it with, just because you don't like change doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And so speak to that as we close, because we only have a couple more minutes. So.
Yeah, I think obviously change, we've all experienced it, especially the last season. I don't even know how many years it's been now with the pandemic. But it's inevitable and it's part of life. And so we've got to figure out, with every variable that life presents us, we have to be able to go with it. So you add a baby, ooh, that's a change. You add a third baby, ooh, that's a change.
It's a big change.
You change churches, whoa, that's a change. And so you've got to be partners in that. And I think we've covered a lot in all the other areas, but you got to you're on the same team.
Yeah.
You're on the same team. And so wherever you're changing, you just got to flow with it.
Yeah. And let me just say this, some of you, I just wasn't in the notes, but are changing things just to change it. And maybe things don't need to change and you're bringing your own chaos in your own life.
Wow.
And so be processing that as, why am I wanting to do this? Or why am I want to jump ship? Or why do I want to go to another church? Or any of that. And a lot of times it's for good reasons, but have you actually processed it and allowed your spouse to come in, your family, and really think, this decision is going to make a huge impact on everybody. So let's just process this together.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
huge.
through that, a lot of times, like, no, you're having bad pizza. You need to draw closer to Jesus in this moment. We don't just need to do something just to do it.
Yeah.
And to work together. Because at the end of the day, as we close, like, it feels like tension. If you want to grab that. Actually, I'll just go in the middle here. What used to be tension for marriage is actually when you put Jesus in the center of it. Now those two things come together, right? Your calendar, your call, all of it actually comes together. No longer is it a tension you're feeling with one another. No, Jesus is the one who tied that knot in marriage. We believe that. He brought two together. So really, at the end of the day, he's the one who's leading. It's just two people now that have put both lives together, and that's why it's really a surrender, is to say, I surrender these things together. Lord, you're the one who is leading. And so when I feel tension in our relationship, it's not our marriage, it's not our ministry. I need to go back to Jesus and say, why am I feeling this tension?
Wow.
Because it could be with you.
Yeah.
And so that's just, I hope that was just encouraging for you guys today. I think we don't got any time for Q&A, but if you have any questions or anything, we would love to just chat with you afterwards. I do have my book in the back, and I did write it for you. I did write it for pastors and leaders, and so I'd love to just chat with you back there and get it to you if you want it. But let's pray. Will you pray?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you, Jesus. We just come before you today, and God, there's a lot of moments we can just sit through things and just hear them, and God, we don't take lightly that we're in an environment right now just to hear from you. Not just in this session, but God, in this conference. God, we don't want it to just go by and we miss another thing because we're just so busy from A to B. God, we as collectively as a network stop right now and we pause and we bow our knee, God, and we submit to the lordship of Jesus Christ and we say, what are you saying? What are you wanting to say to us, God? We're listening. We're open. Where we need to be corrected, God, I pray that you would begin to bring some conviction right now. God, where we need healing, I pray that you would begin to bring up those wounds right now. You are the author, God, and we submit our plans to you. And as we submit our plans to you, we submit our spouses. God, we submit our future spouses. God, we submit our children.
Yes, Jesus.
We submit our future
Give it to you,
children
Lord.
to you, God.
They're yours.
Because without you, God, we can't do it. God, without you, we are nothing. None of us in here, God, are worthy of the call you've placed on us, but God, we step boldly into it today.
Yes.
God, because we know you have called us for such a time as this, to lead this world, to train this next generation, to learn who you are, so that we can lead people to your throne room. We love you, Jesus, and we just thank you. We thank you for the opportunity. We never want to take it lightly, what you've put in us to do. We love you, Jesus, in your name.